All right. So thank you everyone for coming in for the 3-2-1 Reach Out Loud grand opening of the virtual book-inspired itinerary library. So definitely a mouthful, but it really gives a good idea of what this really is that we have going on here. So just for a quick introduction of myself, my name's Ashley. My name is Ashley Ruby. Many of you might know me as Ashley Ragsdale, if you've known me from when I was younger, and maybe just Miss Ashley, if maybe I have some students out there. But either way, I've been teaching for a little while. I've been teaching for about 10 years, and I teach English as a second language. So I've been able to get pretty deep into a lot of aspects of language and culture in the United States. And sometimes I'll even have to look into some of the language and culture of the English language in India or in the UK. And it really is important to be familiar with the cultural nuances and language. So with that, I've been looking for a project to do on the side to kind of keep me connected with everything because teaching can take up a lot of time. And this is kind of what I started doing a while back. Pagesdale LLC initially was started to teach English as a second language in different companies and to help employees to become more comfortable communicating in all different ways at work. So now this is a little bit different because since then I've started focusing on community museums and really just education in general, not just for the professional realm, but looking towards all these homeschooling families. I myself could see myself as a homeschooling parent someday. So with that introduction, these itineraries are really meant to be a product that opens up so many possibilities for individuals traveling, staying home, all types of educational institutions, but I'm really hoping to help out small community museums. So these small community museums might be anywhere in the United States, in the world, and I want to highlight them by including them in these itineraries. So let's go ahead and open it up. So the bookshelf is where you're going to find these itineraries, okay? Right now, the only bookshelf that we have is the public domain inspiration bookshelf right here. And all of the bookshelves come along with a key. It's a little cropped right here, right now. But the key is going to show you, of course, in a little snapshot, what all of these icons mean. And these icons will help you get an idea of if this particular itinerary is a good fit for you. So let's go ahead and open it first. So if you're in, you can go ahead and jump in. Make it public. Settings, not edit. So go into details. It's the big moment. And public. Save. Yes. All right, so now everyone should have access to the public domain book-inspired itineraries. So when you're looking at the key, you'll notice that there are these 6 different icons. So first of all, it's good to know if this travel itinerary isn't necessarily meant to take you to far places, right? These itineraries that have a little house by them, they're just for people to check out their hometown from a new perspective. So if you have a park, you can probably check out one of these books, read one of these books, and then hang out and see home from kind of a more educational view, or really just see it through the eyes of the author. Now below that, we have this calendar and the parentheses. And these two together will let you know the best time of year to go check out this itinerary and check out those places. This pops up a few times. We'll see some examples. The one below here, the kind of like the globe, you see the longitude and the latitude lines. You see these on passports quite a bit, this little icon. And it means that your itinerary or that itinerary includes destinations in different continents, not just different countries, but different continents. So there's quite a bit of travel going on there, and you can make it last as long as you want it to. Now, after this one, we have, I just noticed I'll probably need to plug in my computer. But we have the ratings. So red is for rated R. So that means for adults. It just means that there might be some topics within the book that just aren't really child friendly. It doesn't mean that there's anything risque going on during the travels. But if you are interested in really going into some books like that and going into that type of history, that is possible if you're really looking for something that's more adult, okay? But those aren't as openly right now on the itinerary list in the library. So below that, the yellow, those are just PG-13, generally okay for everyone, but we want to make sure that adult discretion is involved. And you just need to be prepared for those moments to come up, whether it be at the particular museums or the types of events. And it's not just the information, but it's the activities. Maybe the activities are really more involved, and it might be a bit overwhelming for some of the younger ones. But the green, you're good to go for everyone, absolutely everyone, not too physically involved. And also that content should be pretty easy to handle any age, for any age. And these books could be children's books, but they could also be novels, just novels that don't cover content that's too intense. We also have books that are a series of short stories. Right now, we don't have an itinerary that's based on one specific short story, but that's definitely within the realm of possibility. So right below that, just take a look at the key. Let me know if you have any questions. You can type any questions in the chat. I'm going to grab my charger. All right. So let's see, it doesn't seem like there are any questions. Good. So just below that, just below the key, you'll notice that there are some links that will take you to audiobooks. All right, so these are all based on public domain, meaning that it's pretty generic, all right? If you're interested in something more custom, if you're interested in something more specific to your interest and more about that, but I might have to reach out to the author to make sure that we get permission. And I just want to make sure that getting started, we're making sure that we're using resources that are truly accessible to everyone so that everyone can feel comfortable understanding what's being offered and how they might be able to get the most out of it themselves as a service. And those are human read and human generated audiobooks. And then there are the computer generated ones. Same deal, just a different origin. All right, so as you come down, you'll notice that the itineraries are split up, organized out. And this one, if you remember, is telling us what's going on with this particular itinerary. You can unmute yourself. You can join in the chat. So we have the first icon, which of course is the globe, the longitude and latitude, and that's saying that this itinerary has destinations all over the world. Okay, so well, actually, not necessarily all over the world, but and at least 2 different continents. What age group is it for? Right, absolutely. So this would be for PG-13. PG-13. And of course, if in your family, if PG-13 pretty much means everyone, that's perfectly fine, right? Even if, you know, you have some younger ones, okay? But it's totally up to you. I just offered these to give a little bit of guidance, a little bit of guidance. All right, let's jump down here for something a little, ooh, what about this one? What about the Tale of Betsy Butterfly? What are these icons? Yeah, it has a little home there, which means that this is really for anyone, anywhere, as long as you kind of open up the itinerary and it looks appropriate for you. You can go through, read this book. I believe it's a series of short stories, and maybe you can just read the book and hang out, go to the same park, and just have some fun with this itinerary. So in U to Z, we don't have as many books, but we do see use of the calendar and the parentheses. So Wigwam Evenings, Sweet Folk Tales Retold by Unknown. This one, it's recommended that you go to these places during the spring and fall months. And it's recommended for age groups 13 and above and accompanied by adults, just because there can be some tough topics being had or being discussed within the book and throughout the itinerary. Okay. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me. All of these itineraries, by the way, are AI generated. So we're just going to go ahead and take a look at one. Is there anyone who wants to request anything they saw as we were scrolling through? Any requests? Right, so we'll go with one of my personal favorites. Okay, I had to read this book in school. I did not want to read it. And after I started reading, I didn't want to put it down. So it's not the only book that I experienced like that, but it's the only one like that that's also in public domain. So Pride and Prejudice, let's click on this one. So I asked Gemini to give me an itinerary, and this is what came back. And this is really just explaining the concept of Pagesdale LLC and the product of book-inspired travel itineraries, okay? But the formatting would be different if we're building one on our own. If you're an author and you want to build an itinerary based off of your book, would definitely be hopefully adding a bit more structure, but it's up to you. If you like the formatting here, I'd be happy to go ahead and set it up just like it is here. It works perfectly fine. But the itineraries that I'm putting together, they're formatted a little bit differently. I'll put it that way. Okay. So this tour follows the footsteps, okay, of Pride and Prejudice, as it says at the top. And it starts in London. And you're going through different parts of that these places are relevant. So the detail that AI is able to go into on so many books so quickly, I must say that even though I'm going through reading books and developing itineraries, it takes much more time. And so that's why this particular itinerary is free. It will remain free. It allows me and anyone else to just be a little bit creative, see things that we can do, and from there bounce off some ideas. I know, of course, anyone out there can go ahead and ask Gemini to make an itinerary, but I would not be making itineraries exactly this way. I would be going through much more slowly, combing through much more in a detailed manner, reflecting how the author would want to build an itinerary, reflecting the learning goals that are being had and everything like that. It's just explaining the concept, okay? So that's just one book, and also includes some activities at the bottom. And speaking of activities, let's check and see and make sure that we're hitting all of our points that we wanted to hit today. So we opened the library, which is exciting. And we discussed the key. And we're discussing an itinerary right now. And so what's next? Open the study rooms. So speaking of activities, study rooms, they're challenges. They're a layer on top of your travel that allow you to set some learning goals and develop some skills and really track some of your learning. Now, the first example that I have here is cultural competency. So I'll go ahead and open up that one. And it's not quite cooperating. One second. Just want to make the screen as big as possible. There we go. So cultural assimilation and the other courses, they work in percentages and proportions, okay? So for a certain percent of the time allotted, you'll want to focus on this part of the course or the lesson or the challenge, the series of challenges, okay, the extension. And that first part for cultural assimilation is highlighting your interests, but we'll come back to that. First, let's just go through and open up all of the study rooms, one at a time. So details, public, save. And next, listening proficiency. Going from private to public. Save. And I really hope my internet connection is holding up all right on everyone else's end for this. Speaking proficiency is now public. Now, these courses are public. The language development courses are public. However, they're not complete. So I'll go through the cultural competency, which is a great example of what's to come with the other ones. They're a little unique in that they're based on percents and not necessarily, your own pace, right? So let's say you have an hour. You should spend 5% of your hour doing such part of this lesson or this course, this series of lessons. But if you have 5 months, you should also spend 5%. Okay, I know. What am I talking about? It's crazy. What is that? Okay, but it'll work. It'll work. Okay. So for this one, details, it's all about staying as surface or digging as deep as works for you. And this is taking some time because of my internet, but for that reason, I'm going to start talking about the cultural competency because, oops. Might not be claiming to know everything about every culture. Absolutely not. I'm not even claiming to know everything about my own culture. In fact, I'm really encouraging recognizing all of the different types of culture that there are, right? So you have ethnic cultures, and I think that's usually what we think of most often when we think about culture. Very complex, incredibly complex, right? So I'm really encouraging people to come to this study room and look at other cultures, the culture of your local baseball team. Okay. It can be hard to assimilate yourself into these different cultures. But if we practice these less, I don't want to say, it's not necessarily fragile. It's not that other cultures are more fragile. They're really just much more precious, right? When you're handling something as precious as someone's ethnic culture, you really want to have some practice with some less precious cultures. So that's what I'm going to talk more about in just a second. Also, you want to know the culture of your local the same way. If you want to participate, it's a good idea to familiarize yourself with their culture. How do they operate? What are their language do they like to use? What tone of communication do they prefer to work with? Some very serious, okay, and very experienced organizations might not prefer to present themselves that way for a reason. Okay. And so you really need to dig deeper than what's expected and really understand the culture of all types of groups of people and organizations. But let's dive into be an overview. This is an overview. And again, the mouse is lagging. All right, so cultural assimilation, travel extension. So this is extending on your travel that you're already doing. It's not a requirement. It's not, as things are set up right now, an extra cost. You could reach out to me for an itinerary based on a book that you're recommending. And then you could free of charge go into these study rooms and add on this extra extension. Or maybe on the flip side, you see an itinerary that you you like, and it's fine for you, but you'd like to have a custom course made. Okay. And so that's where the instructional design piece comes in. There's so much that can be done. And I'm really genuinely, purposefully only scratching the surface here, but I'm hoping that it opens up a better understanding of the possibilities and the return on investment for community museums to include themselves on these itineraries, create their own itineraries based on books that are relevant to their exhibit. And their missions, okay, and collaboration. So anyway, I'm getting off topic yet again. But cultural assimilation, travel extension. Expand your cultural competency while traveling with demonstration and development challenges. So you might be traveling to a far off land, okay, and you want to practice talking about your personal, professional space, right? You want to talk about your hobbies. You want to talk about your work experience. But you find that a lot of times your approach isn't the same approach culturally where you go. Okay, so for example, if I'm going somewhere and I want to talk about music and learning how to play certain instruments, I learned that when I traveled, most people would talk about learning how to play an instrument in relation to religion and the church. And I'm aware of the huge connection between church, religion. Bring up a guitar, it would pretty much be related back to church. Or anytime I would hear anyone playing music, it would pretty much be related to church and the gospel. So I had to recognize that cultural difference in order to really talk about my personal interests. So culture is so wide a topic that you can study culture even between yourself and a sibling, between your family and another family, between your school and another school, between your workplace and another workplace, right? Workplace culture is definitely a widely accepted concept. So I think using these courses just to practice discussing cultures of all types can help us in situations where we really are discussing ethnic cultures, which can be much more sensitive and complex. And you can take a closer look at the overview. I won't read it word for word, but I will go over the concept of these different parts of a lesson that work as a whole. Okay. I mean, of course, lessons work as part of a whole. What's different about that? Well, for this course and for all of the courses in the study rooms, it doesn't matter how much time you have. You'll spend 5% of your time focusing on highlighting your interests. If you only have a few hours, you're going to figure out how many minutes are you going to use to highlight your interests, okay? And as you're traveling, you should think about what you're interested in most and where you can try to go in and understand a culture better, okay? So for this piece, I have some sentence frames. So you can consider using one of these sentence frames. There are just a few, okay? These are very generic and incredibly generic, okay? I'm hoping I can add more. Maybe if you all decide to do this course, you can send me what you have and I can add them based on what you all found to be useful. But I put some case studies, some possible hypothetical case studies to give a better idea. So let's say that you decide to go and work on cultural competency. And while you're traveling, you're just taking a closer look at the schools. You're like, hey, I'm going to Asia. I'm popping around Asia. I decided to use the itinerary, The Art of War. And so I'm going around different parts of Asia right now. And I just want to pay attention to schools. You know, she's working with, in her school, students who might identify as Asian American, but who might have also immigrated at a very young age. So she's just looking to kind of see how their base experience in schools in different Asian countries might influence how they experience school now. A very specific culture, extremely specific culture. But you got to understand, every person has their own very specific culture. And a lot of times, when you're using ethnic cultures and practicing with other types of culture can help us to be more sensitive and experienced when working with these ethnic-based cultures. So after you've done your 5% of your time highlighting your interests, then you spend your next available. It doesn't matter if you have an hour. It doesn't matter if you have 10 weeks, okay? 10% of that time needs to be dedicated to defining the context for your travels, right? So you know what you want to accomplish, and now you just need to figure out how you can do that while you're traveling. And that's it. But that might require you being there for a while, seeing what's available, and then kind of taking down some notes. This time, in order to help you, I've added some questions. And this could be for one person, it can be for a couple, it can be for a family, a group, okay? You can do this individually or collaboratively, and you answer these questions to help you create that context for the goal that you just set up with the first 5%. The first question here is, what would you call your focus in 10 words or less if you had to describe it as a skill? So you had to go back, or Cindy had to go back to what she had written about, make that into a skill, right? And so once you've put it into a skill, it's kind of easier to go through and kind of evaluate yourself later in the next step. After you have the skill and then the other pieces of the context. Right, jumping on to the next piece, demonstrating your ability. You might be saying, what? You want me to demonstrate that I can do these things while I'm traveling? Yes. Use 20% of your time to see where you are in your ability to do this, okay? I'm not saying that this is going to be easy by any means or comfortable. It's a challenge, okay? But these are the types of things that we need to do to truly improve cultural competency. So essentially, while you're traveling, you need to decide on 1 to 3 times or dates. Again, if you're only traveling for a couple of days, maybe you just give yourself 30 minutes where you go to a place and you try to apply yourself and demonstrate your cultural competency. So Cindy, she might find someone who's with their parents, who's at a school, and she might say, hey, you know, my understanding is that schools are like this here in Asia. She can talk about her understanding of schools. She can hopefully get some feedback. Maybe she actually sets up a meeting with someone there who can explain schools to her. Maybe she can actually go that deep. Okay. But you need to plan ahead and you need to find a way to actually demonstrate your cultural competency while you're traveling. So press Books has a really good description of the different components. Sure. And if you break down your practice exercise into these different pieces, okay, when you're engaging with people in other cultures and thinking about this specific skill, how are you able to use symbols? How are you able to use language? How are you able to discuss and integrate different beliefs appropriately, values, and even artifacts? So tools, things like that. Sometimes when you go different places, different tools will be preferred, right? So just because you go into a kitchen in another country, you can't necessarily expect to see the same tools. And if you're a chef and you want to practice your cultural competency around the world, you know, that might be something that you come into contact with. If you're, you know, like me and you're more so of a teacher, you can feel pretty confident that you'll see pins, paper, markers, kind of the same artifacts, right? Yeah. So if you're looking for a deeper understanding of how to break down your practice into different pieces to evaluate it, then Pressbooks is there for you to better understand that. All right. Next, two pieces are going to require much more of your time. Good job. You did it. You did your 1 to 3 moments of practice. And now what you want to do is think about how you'll improve. Let's say for Cindy, she school, she set up the meeting, but rest appropriately, right? Maybe that could be an instance of having the right artifacts, the right clothes, or having the right value system, right? How are you viewing professionalism? Okay. How would she imagine that going differently next time? She might dress differently. She might ask the right questions. Spend about 25 just observing others, okay? Watching how other people are doing things and imagining yourself being more successful the next time around, okay? Just relax. Just relaxing for a little bit, just taking it all in, because it can take a lot of effort to demonstrate your cultural competency. And if it doesn't go well, it can be really devastating. And you need to prepare yourself to have some time to relax and accept what happened before you go in and really try to collect some resources to help you. All right, and then finally, that's the last piece. After you've reflected on everything that happened, that's when you can go look for resources to actually learn to speak differently. And then you just start all over again. So you should spend about 40% of your time, the rest maybe your interests have changed, and then you define the context. Maybe the context has changed, maybe it hasn't. And then you get to demonstrate again. Maybe Cindy gets to go to a different school. She wears the clothes that she should. She feels more confident. She uses the right language. She asks the right questions. But maybe this time she bumps up against difference in values in a different way. Okay. And then again, she dreams of improvement. And then she develops knowledge and prepares for application until she can go again. Now, this is if she's there for maybe a few months, maybe even a few years, okay? And she can go through as many times as she likes, okay? Maybe she's only there for a few days. She can only go through one time, but cycle spends the same percentage amount on these 5 different steps every time. And that's how it works. So for the listening proficiency, these courses right now only have the overview available. But bit by bit, I'll be releasing also those 5 components of these extensions that will work just like the cultural competency. And as time goes on, I'll add more resources, more things to kind of help and respond to what people are saying that they need. So there will be listening travel extension, listening travel extension. In the same way, you'll be able to practice and then reflect. There's the speaking proficiency extension. Same idea, but of course, focusing on speaking. We'll give some pointers on how to set yourself up to best practice and then assess where you are to then really be able to improve, okay? And that's anytime you're traveling. And even at home, but at least while seeing your home from a different perspective. So here's the reading introduction. And finally, the writing introduction. So if you have any questions about the listening, speaking, reading, or writing sooner rather than later, but just to keep things interesting in the space, I'll be rolling things out bit by bit. All right, so we are down to our last 8 minutes or so. And I'll just check and make sure that we've hit everything. We discussed the study rooms. We went over the cultural competency study rooms. And we need to talk about the tables. Just really quickly. So we're actually at a table right now. Tables are all about coming together and discussing different topics. So right now we're at the itinerary table. This event is currently live, okay? And it's a Zoom meeting. It's a Zoom meeting. These meetings could also be just a chat room where everyone knows they come in at the same time and they chat. So this particular table is all about discussing services and products related to the itinerary library. But other tables are here related to current events, okay? So people will be traveling all over, reading different books, but we're still connected by current events, okay? Also cultural assimilation. Those who are working on building their cultural competency will be able to come together and discuss their experiences. They don't need to be focusing on the same culture, right? Just that process of working to understand a new culture and the challenges that come with it will help people bond enough, I'm sure. It doesn't have to be the same culture. And then language learning. So those who are working in those study rooms for listening, speaking, all right, listening, speaking, reading, or writing, okay, they can all come together and talk about their experiences, okay? Different types of events. Some of them might be in person, okay? If we find that there are people in the same place, we can also schedule some events in person, but definitely a bunch of events virtually online, either like this video or chat. Okay. And I think now we're just going to see if there are any questions. Yeah, so does anyone have any questions about anything? So if you find that you have any questions later, you can send me a message by going over to the main lobby for mingling, and you can ask me a question. Yep, I see a question there. Erilyn, what's your question? So you can unmute or you can type it in.
Yeah, how can I do for when I'm traveling to not be that nervous when I have to talk or practice my English?
So you said when you're traveling, how can you not be so?
Yeah, that I cannot be like that nervous to practice my English with strangers.
Yeah, so I think if you have a plan in advance, Erilyn, if you decide, okay, this is what I want to talk about. So if you go to a specific store, right? Let's say you practice all of the vocabulary for clothes, right? Shirts, pants, shoes, different types of accessories, and you prepare yourself to go into a clothing store. Maybe you don't really want to buy anything, okay? But you can practice that specific vocabulary in that environment without worrying about random words as much as you would if you were just on the street, right? And it's the same with restaurants, it's the same with different types of events. Um, and really it's about preparation and planning. What's your goal? And then creating a moment for you to practice that skill. Absolutely.
Okay, yeah,
So
yeah, that makes sense. Thank you very
does that,
much.
yeah, does that sound helpful or reasonable?
Yeah, that sounds helpful. Yeah, because knowing what I want to practice, I'll get more confidence with myself and know, or I can suggest the answer that I'm going to get from the people related to the topic that I'm talking about.
Right. So it's easier to expect what they might say and then prepare yourself for that. But I think being nervous, it just happens. Being okay with feeling nervous and knowing that that feeling doesn't determine your success, right? You can feel nervous and still be doing a great job. So yeah, just because you're nervous doesn't mean you're not ready or not doing a good job.
Yeah, that's right. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for the question.
Sure.
All right, so here's some things that are to come. We talked about the other study rooms being added to, and then also I'm hoping that we can add in some people who can answer some questions. Instructional designers that'll be able to help with adding more courses and study rooms, and then also travel agents who help to build up some more of those itineraries. So that's pretty much everything that we have. Thanks so much for coming in. Thanks so much for watching the recording. If you're watching later, thanks for waiting for it to be available in another language. If you're waiting for that, for it to be more accessible. Just thank you so much. And for now and for what's possibly to come. And happy traveling. And please do reach out if you need anything. All right. Bye, everybody.
Thank you.